Okay, welcome back. Today we're diving into something complex. The Sino-Indian Line of Actual Control, the LAC, specifically the standoff from 2020 onwards. 4 years on, and there's still so much to unpack.
Absolutely. And particularly, two big themes emerge from the sources we've looked at. This domestic idea in India of a great betrayal and perhaps more globally, this phenomenon called the world's strategic silence.
Right, so our mission today is really to get into how this long-simmering border dispute, decades old, fundamentally changed after 2020. And crucially, why major global players seemed, well, quiet about specific territorial changes. Let's start maybe with the flashpoint. June 15th, 2020. Galwan Valley. This wasn't just another incident, was it?
No, not at all. This was huge. It shattered decades of confidence-building measures, the CBMs, mechanisms designed to prevent exactly this kind of thing.
And it was violent. The first deadly clash between India and China, two nuclear powers, since way back in 1975. We know officially 20 Indian soldiers died.
And independent estimates suggest Chinese casualties too, maybe 35, 40, possibly more. But the key takeaway from our sources here is that this wasn't some, accidental escalation spiraling out of control.
You mean it was planned?
The analysis points towards a deliberate coercive strategy from China. The goal seems to have been to fundamentally alter the status quo on the ground, change the facts, then force India into negotiations from a weaker position.
That's a high-risk move. Though our sources do indicate New Delhi was also focused on preventing wider conflict, almost prioritizing de-escalation over perhaps restoring the exact previous positions immediately.
And the result, well, the immediate result was this shift towards sustained long-term militarization.
Yeah.
It wasn't temporary.
You mean troops digging in?
Exactly. Both sides rushed huge numbers of troops. We're talking 50, maybe 60,000 soldiers each to the front. And crucially, they started building roads, forward bases, infrastructure designed for a permanent presence.
So the LAC became what, a permanent front line?
Pretty much. One source calls it a premier site of intensified great power competition. It's no longer about patrols, it's about holding ground permanently.
Okay, so this permanent, maybe more stable, but heavily militarized situation. It came at a cost. And that brings us to that domestic critique in India, the betrayal narrative. A lot of that seems to stem from a perceived contradiction. Prime Minister Modi made a public statement saying, neither has anyone intruded into our border.
Right, which seemed at odds with India's own Ministry of External Affairs. They'd stated earlier that the Galwan clash happened because China tried to build a structure on India's side of the LAC.
So the narrative got complicated very quickly.
It did, and some analysts we read suggest this statement, signaled a potential willingness, perhaps, to accept a new reality on the ground in exchange for stopping the fighting, prioritizing tactical peace over pushing back everywhere immediately.
And this links directly to the most concrete loss, doesn't it? The buffer zones.
Yes, the no-patrol buffer zones. This is probably the most contentious outcome. The idea was disengagement, pulling troops back from friction points.
But the practical effect, take Pangong So, the lake area. India reportedly had to pull its troops back significantly from near finger 8 towards finger 3.
Exactly. So while China might also pull back slightly from its furthest point of ingress, India effectively agreed not to patrol large areas it previously did, areas it claims. It traded patrol rights for de-escalation.
And this isn't just abstract lines on a map. We saw reports, direct quotes from local communities, herders, saying they lost access to massive pastures. Real, tangible impact.
That's the human cost right there. It grounds the strategic debate.
So if this shift was happening, if territory was functionally changing hands via these zones, why the relative silence from the rest of the world? The strategic silence.
Well, it boils down to calculations. Strategic self-interest, really. Look at the U.S. Washington's main focus was and is the broader competition with China. So they saw the LAC crisis primarily as an opportunity to strengthen ties with India. Think the Quad alliance.
So for the U.S., it wasn't about the specifics of this border. It was about the bigger picture, containing China.
Largely, yes. Soft balancing against China. The territorial details were secondary to the geopolitical alignment.
Interesting. What about Russia? They have ties with both.
Russia played a careful neutrality game. They're managing this critical triangle, India, Russia, China. Moscow simply couldn't afford to alienate Beijing by condemning its actions against India.
So no unified global front could really form.
Precisely. And then you have, well, Europe and other major economies. Frankly, the sources suggest a degree of apathy. They prioritize stable economic relations, trade links with China, over getting involved in a complex, faraway border dispute.
Economic realism trumping normative concerns about borders.
You could say that.
Okay, let's try to synthesize this. India seems to have traded the possibility of restoring the full status quo ante, getting everything back to exactly how it was before April 2020 for tactical peace.
And in doing so, effectively allowed China's gains, these buffer zones, to become sort of codified on the ground. The world's silence, driven by various self-interests, basically let it happen without major diplomatic pushback.
So where does that leave things? Because the conflict isn't resolved.
No, not at all. And here's a final thought, something we see hinted at. China's approach seems to be tactical pullback from the immediate friction points, yes, but strategic consolidation just behind those lines, building up infrastructure, like in the Depsang Plains area.
Meaning they pull back a bit, but strengthen their overall position slightly further back.
Exactly. So the relationship shifts from trying to resolve the dispute to simply managing the ongoing conflict. It's a different state of play.
And if that's the dynamic, if localized military pressure seems to result in diplomatic concessions, these buffer zones, does that make future, smaller land grabs salami slicing more likely? What does that mean for India's long-term ability to deter China on the border?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? How do you maintain deterrence when localized aggression seems to yield results?
Something for all of us to think about. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.